I want you to think of someone, not a stranger, someone younger, someone with your eyes, you laugh, maybe your nervous habit of going quiet when things got too loud around you. Now I want you to ask yourself a question. I want you to actually sit with it instead of rushing past it, the way we rush past most uncomfortable questions. Have you forgiven that person? Not the person who hurt you, not the parent, not the partner, not the friend. I'm asking about someone else. I'm asking about you, the younger you, the one who stayed quiet, the one who said it's fine when it wasn't fine, the one who smiled through something that should have made them leave the room. Have you forgiven them? Or have you spent years being the harshest critic instead of their advocate? This is Living Content. I'm your host, and today we are doing something I've been circling for a long time. We are coming home to ourselves. We are talking about the quiet, private shame so many of us carry, for the boundaries we didn't set, the silence we kept, the time we let something happen because we simply did not have another option available to us. We are going to take that shame apart, piece by piece, until there's nothing left to carry. So, let's begin. Living Content Era 2 is for the person who's already on the journey and is ready to go even deeper. It's for the deeply reflective human who knows that the gap between external success and internal alignment is real and is no longer willing to paper over it. It's for the woman who holds a lot in her home, in her career, in her community, and is starting to ask harder questions about who is she beneath everything she carries. It's for anyone who is excellent in every room and quietly unsettled on the drive home. It's for anyone who has done enough living to know that who you are on the inside shapes everything that happens on the outside, and who wants to talk about it honestly, without performance and without pretending. Hello sis and the brother in the room. Hello family. Welcome to Living Content Podcast. If this is your first time here, welcome. Living Content is a space for self-leadership, identity, and the kind of visibility that starts on the inside before it ever shows up anywhere else, right? This is era 2 of the show. It's a solo, reflective kind of format that I just sit here with my mic and tea, just me and you. Whatever truth we want to sit with in that week, we do so. If you've been with me for a while, thank you for staying through the pause, through the rebuild, through the quiet in-between seasons. This one has been sitting on my heart, so I'm glad that you are here for it. Today's episode is part of something that I'm realizing that since episode 1 we've been building, which pretty much makes sense now. I think let's call it a homecoming conversation, whatever we call it, whatever we build towards. But I'm realizing that there's a common thread amongst them that speaks about homecoming, which is conversations about returning to parts of ourselves we exiled a long time ago, right? Usually without meaning to. And there is no better place to start the homecoming than with forgiveness. And I realized that there was a different reaction when I shared on my platform about self-forgiveness. There's a thing that many of us have not grappled with when it comes to self-forgiveness. And that's why I thought there is no better way to talk about homecoming without talking about forgiveness. Not forgiveness for the people who hurt us. We talk about quite a lot. I want to talk about the much harder kind of forgiveness. The one that is aimed towards us. The one that is aimed inwards. So here's what we are going to do today. First, we are going to name the shame so it stops living in the shadows where it does the most damage, right? Then we are going to do the work of actually welcoming your younger self back into your life. Not as evidence of weakness, but as someone who belongs at your table. We will build a real framework for apologizing to yourself, because I don't think most of us have ever done that on purpose. We'll challenge a belief that I think quietly runs a lot of our lives. The idea that your current self is somehow more worthy of respect than the version of you who stayed quiet. And we'll close with a practice I've come to call intentional reconciliation. along with what I think is the real final step in learning to say no with your whole chest. So this episode is a long one. Give yourself the full time for it if you can. Walk with it, sit with it, whatever helps you to receive it. Now let's get into it. I want to say something plainly because I think plain language cuts through shame faster than anything else. Stop blaming your younger self for not knowing what you know now. Say that back to yourself for a second. Stop blaming your younger self for not knowing what you know now. Because if you are anything like me, or anything like most of the women I talk to in my community, or in this community even, you are holding a grudge, a real one, unspoken probably, but real, right? And it's not aimed at the person who hurt you. It's aimed at a child or a teenager or a younger adult version of you who didn't stand their ground. Here's what I want you to notice about that sentence though. Didn't stand their ground. Standing your ground requires ground to stand on. It requires a floor beneath you that you trust, a language for what's happening to you, a belief that you are allowed to take up space in the first place, right? Most of us didn't have that floor. We didn't have the language. Nobody handed us the words like, this is a boundary violation, when we were 9 or 15 or 22 and still learning what a healthy relationship was even supposed to feel like. So when I say we carry heavy, quiet shame for the boundaries we didn't set years ago, I mean this literally. Think about how shame shows up. It shows up as a flinch you feel when remembering a conversation from a decade ago where you should have said something and didn't. It shows up as a private irritation you feel at your own history. Like your past self is an embarrassing relative you'd rather not introduce to anyone. It shows up as the voice that says, why didn't I just leave? Or why did I let that go on for so long? Or why did it take me years to say the one sentence that would have changed everything for me? Here's a question underneath all of that, and I want you to really hear it. How could you enforce a rule you didn't have the tools to build? How could you enforce a rule you didn't have the tools to build? You cannot set a boundary you don't know exists. You cannot protect a version of yourself that doesn't yet believe protection is something they are owed. And yet so many of us walk around holding our past selves accountable to a rule book we didn't write until years later. That's not fairness. That's not accountability. That is a quiet kind of cruelty we've been taught to aim at ourselves because it feels safer than aiming at anyone else, right? I want to be really clear about something because I don't want this to be misunderstood. This isn't about excusing harm that was done to you. The person who crossed the line, who took advantage, who violated something in you that should have been protected, they are responsible for that, fully. What we are talking about today is something different. It's the second layer of the wound, the layer where you took the blame that belonged to someone else and quietly redirected some of it to yourself for not stopping them sooner, for not changing the events. Your past silence wasn't a choice. It was a lack of options. And there's a world difference between those two things. A choice implies you had alternatives in front of you and picked the one that hurt you. A lack of options means the tools for a different outcomes simply weren't in your hands yet. You were not weak. You were unequipped. And those are not the same things, sis, even though they can feel identical from the inside. I think about my own life, moments where I stayed in conversations I should have exited, relationships I stayed quiet in far too long than I needed to, professional rooms where I let something slide because speaking up felt more dangerous than staying silent. For years, I told myself a story about those moments, that I was too soft, too accommodating, too easily walked over. It took me a long time to realize that story was incomplete. The fuller and more truer story was that I hadn't learned what I know now. I hadn't yet built the emotional infrastructure that lets me say, that doesn't work for me, without my whole body going into alarm. That distinction changes everything because if you were weak, there's an implied character flaw to fix. But if you were simply unequipped, there's no flaw. There really is no flaw. To think about it. There's just a gap that time and experience has since closed. And you don't punish someone for a gap that's already been closed. You thank them for surviving long enough to close it. So let's start bridging that gap between who you were and who you are now, between the version of you that didn't know how to protect their peace and the version of you that's learning slowly and sometimes clumsy how to hold a boundary. I want you to picture your current boundary practice, however new, however shaky, and however much you're still figuring it out, as a home that you're building, right? Think about it as a home that you're building. Maybe it's a small home right now. Maybe it has a few rooms, a boundary around your time, maybe a boundary around who gets access to your emotional energy, a boundary around what you will and will not explain yourself to anyone anymore, right? Now here's the invitation. Don't leave your younger self standing outside that home. Don't make her wait on the porch while you are enjoying the warmth alone, silently ashamed that she is the reason it took so long to get it built. Bring her inside. Let her sit in your table. Let her be in that house too. This matters because many of us treat your growth as a kind of divorce from our past selves. We talk about who we used to be, as if the person is someone we've outgrown and would rather not be associated with. But that person built the foundation you're standing on right now. Whether you believe it or not, that person built the foundation you're standing on right now. Every boundary you have today exists because what happened when you didn't have one. The lesson came from somewhere. It came from her. It came from that person. And they had to live through those life experiences without the tools that you have now today. They've had to experience it so you can have and know what you have today. So when I say bridge the gap, I mean something practical. The next time you set a boundary, the next time you say no to a request or end a conversation that's draining you, or tell someone clearly that something doesn't work for you, I want you to mentally include your younger self in that moment. Not as a spectator feeling embarrassed by comparison, but as someone finally getting to witness the outcome she couldn't create for herself. Let her watch. Let her learn. Even now, even after the fact that this was possible all along, it just took time to arrive here. This is what I mean by homecoming. It's not a single event. It's a practice of continually inviting the earlier parts of yourself into the present, instead of leaving them standing in the past, in the rain, outside in the cold, being blamed and alone. Try this next time you notice that old flinch of shame about something you didn't do years ago. Instead of following the flinch into the spiral, I should have known better. I should have said something. I should have just left. Why didn't I leave? Pause and say internally, she didn't have this yet, and I do now. Come sit with me while I use it. That's the bridge. That's the welcome home. It's a small shift, but it rewires the entire relationship you have with your own history. And I think that is the practice we should be doing. Now I want to get practical with you, because I don't think most of us have ever done this on purpose. Apologize to ourselves. Have you apologized to yourself? We know how to apologize outwards. Some of us over-apologize outwards. For every single thing we do, somewhat we feel like an inconvenience, and we can say, so sorry, apologies, pardon me. But turning that same tenderness inwards towards the self we've been quietly blaming, that's the muscle most of us have never used. So here's a framework. I want you to think of it in 3 movements: naming, releasing, and reassigning. Naming, releasing, and reassigning. Okay. The first movement is naming. This means being specific, not a vague general "I forgive myself," which can feel true in the moment and slip away an hour later because it never touched anything concrete, right? I mean, actually naming the moment you've been holding against yourself. Maybe it's a specific conversation. Maybe it's a season of your life where you let something happen for far too long. Maybe it's a relationship you stayed in past the point you knew you should have left. Name it. specifically, the way you would have named a wound before you clean it. You cannot apologize to a blur, right? You have to apologize to a moment. So be clear on what exactly you're apologizing for. And sometimes we do that to other people. What exactly are you apologizing for? So that they honor exactly that moment, that thing, as having happened and how it affected you. So do the same, okay? The second movement is releasing the blame from the wrong location and placing it correctly. This is the part of the framework that I think matter most. So I want to slow down here. Most of us, when we relive an old wound, we spend our mental energy in one of two places. Either we are replaying what the other person did, the crossing of the line, their disrespect, the violation, and stewing in that, right? Or, and this is the part we are addressing today, we are replaying what we didn't do, the boundary we didn't set, the sentence we didn't say, and we let that second replay carry a disproportionate amount of emotional weight. I want you to physically notice, next time you replay an old moment, where your focus goes. Does it go to the person who crossed the line, or does it go to your own silence? For a lot of us, especially those raised to keep the peace, to be agreeable, to not make things difficult, our focus goes to our own silence far more often than it goes to the person responsible. That's backwards. And the apology framework requires us to consciously redirect it. So here's the practice. Instead of an apology like, I'm sorry I didn't say something sooner, which still centers the failure to act. Try an apology that centers the survival instead. I'm sorry I've been blaming you for not having the tools you hadn't been given yet. I'm sorry I made you carry responsibility that was never fully yours to carry. Do you feel the difference now? The first apology is still somewhat an accusation to yourself. The second one is an actual release. The third movement is reassigning the meaning. So this is where you take the story you've told about that moment and rewrite its ending. Not to deny what happened, but to correctly identify what it means to you. So if the story was, I stayed quiet because I was weak, the reassigned story is, I stayed quiet because staying quiet was the only tool available to me at the time. And it worked. I survived. I got to this moment. I got to become someone with more tools. And that is not a lesser story. That is, if anything, a more accurate and more compassionate one than the first story we told ourselves, right? So try saying this out loud or writing it down if that feels more natural to you. I forgive you for the boundary you didn't know how to set. You were doing the best you could with what you had. I am no longer going to make you the villain of a story where you were actually the one who survived. Sit with that sentence. Let it land somewhere in your body, not just your mind, right? Let it do something to your body. Let it sit within your body. This is, I think, one of the most under-practiced form of healing work there is. The deliberate spoken apology to your own story. We rehearse forgiveness of others constantly. We do it so often, and sometimes we even do it without even thinking about it. We over-apologize. We are rarely taught to rehearse forgiveness of self with the same intention. Today, I'm asking you to at least start doing that. Okay? Thank you for listening to this episode. I really do appreciate you for being here. Please remember to share your love openly here by subscribing, sharing these episodes, and also just adding your feedback on the reviews. So this podcast can also be easily found by those in similar journeys and needing the message here. I would love to hear how the podcast is helping you. So do share that too with me, and be sure to check the podcast out on Instagram. Keep well. Chat to you soon.